Hello, welcome everyone to this edition of Rossiter's Ringside Report. I'm Mark Chang. I'm joined by the boxing coach at the Annandale Boxing Program, Leo Rossiter. And go ahead and take it away on today's topic.
Today's topic is skill versus popularity. We touched on that in the previous episode, that years ago, 50s, 60s, and into the 70s, people were involved in skill. They wanted to see two high-level or mediocre level, just two rather evenly matched opponents going after each other, you know. And then over the years, that's kind of diminished. And what we see now is a popularity contest. The guy who sells the most tickets gets on every show, and the guys, you know, the regular fighters, you know, they you got some good fighters that just fall by the wayside because they can't sell the tickets, or they don't quite have the, you know, they haven't made it to the National Golden Gloves 3 years in a row, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. So there's no, you know, manager with deep pockets that's going to pick them up. And I've been meditating on this for a couple of years now, that if you got a guy that's popular, they'll keep him winning if they got to scrape somebody up off a bar stool. and the skill component seems to have diminished a great deal over the years. Have you thought about that? Have you given that any thought?
I have actually, and the one thing that I've always wondered about is in almost every other sport, whether it's soccer, whether it's tennis, basketball, football, you name it, there's always a tournament that determines, you know, the champion, the winner, right? So let's say tennis, for example. Well, this year there's, you know, the Australian Open. All of these top tennis players, they enter it, and there's one guy who's going to win it, and one woman's going to win it. And then there's the French Open, and then there's the U.S. Open, Wimbledon, etc. So every year you have these tournaments, and somebody is going to win that tournament. And I was always curious why, and they do that in amateur boxing, but why in professional boxing it's done so differently. So that's really been my question, and kind of going back to what you're saying, I do want to make mention, there was one fight this past weekend, sorry, not this past weekend, but 2 weekends ago, and it was on the Vergil Ortiz, Erickson, Lubin undercard. It was the chief supporting bout. It was between Darius Fulghum and fellow Pennsylvanian David Stevens. That was an evenly matched fight, and it was a draw. And there was some boos because there was some, I guess a lot of people thought there was a little bit too much holding, but I thought it was a great fight. Both guys gave a great effort. Congratulations to you both if you're watching. But that was kind of my take on, you know, the whole professional boxing thing is, you know, as far as what you're saying with the popularity versus the skill level is, I always thought, you know, why isn't it a tournament system like just about every other sport?
That's a interesting concept. You're right. Football, baseball, they have their they start at zero at the beginning of the year, and then they end up with their various championship games. And going back to the popularity thing, this gentleman, Jake Paul, he seems, you know, he for some reason is very popular, and from what I understand, he's going to be against a British guy,
Anthony
Joshua, and Joshua's popular. He can draw a crowd, and Paul can draw a crowd. So that's going to be a huge gate. Now, I've watched a couple of Jake Paul's fights, and he's, you know, a mediocre fighter at best, but he keeps pulling things out that like cheap carnival tricks to make him look a lot more proficient than what he is. Like the fight with Tyson. Now, the fight with Tyson, they had oversized gloves. They had cut it down to 2-minute rounds, and Tyson, he's like me. He's got one foot in the grave and the other on the banana peel. So, and I'm surprised people buy that. I had no interest in it. But if Jake Paul fought as a regular boxer, he would, he wouldn't be as his record and stuff wouldn't be as glamorous as it is now, about picking and choosing, and then it even makes you wonder if somebody's getting a couple dollars in their pocket to, slow it down a little bit against him. It makes you wonder. I'm not saying that's happening, but I'm just saying things like that. Cross your brain. And I got no qualms against the guy making money. I mean, he's found a way to make money. What I see is that I don't see a value for boxing with that. I think it's going to end up being just a popularity contest, and then boxing will dry up. I won't say it'll vanish, but because there'll always be the hardcore purists like us, but it's not going to be to the extent that it is today.
Yeah. So talking about that fight just a little bit more in depth, he was originally scheduled to fight Gervonta Davis. I think maybe what happened was people were just, Gervonta Davis, the size difference is just so vast, right? And then he goes the opposite direction. Anthony Joshua is noticeably bigger than Jake Paul. He's definitely got a size advantage. One thing is, though, that 36 feels a lot different than 28. And 28 is actually a very good age to be a boxer. That's actually kind of another discussion in and of itself. But not only is Joshua 36, he's had like the 50 or so amateur fights. He's had 30 or so pro fights. And he has been wobbled. Ruiz, Klitschko, Usyk, etc. So he's got some wear on him, and I think that Jake Paul sees that, and it is possible, or it's not impossible, that Jake Paul shocks the world. He's not bad. He's not bad at all. I think it's a big jump though, because Joshua's fought just the best fighters in the world. He's an Olympic champion. And that's going to be a big gap to close, even with the wear on his body, even with the age difference. What do you think how the fight itself is going to play out?
Well, like I said, Jake Paul does have some skill. He's a mediocre fighter at best, journeyman. But that is not degrading. I mean, that's, a mediocre journeyman is a tough hombre.
Yeah.
He's going to kill half the people on the street.
Yeah.
Probably break my jaw. but when, he comes up in class like that, I think that Joshua, now here's the thing about what's the behind the scenes deal, because we already mentioned that with Tyson, they had the big gloves, they cut the rounds down. What are they going to do to compensate for the lack of talent that between Jake Paul and our good friend there? Why can't I?
Anthony Joshua.
I'm not British.
Right.
My people don't like the British, but Anthony Joshua, he's, I think if he wants to, he can stop him in 3
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I give it 3 because I think Jake Paul's tough and he can take a punch.
Mm-hmm.
He can take a decent shot.
Mm-hmm.
So I give it 3 rounds.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a smart analysis. We don't know, like you said, behind the scenes, what size of ring they're going to wear. Do they give a wider ring for Jake Paul to move more? Do they have bigger gloves to kind of muffle the punches a little bit more? Do they cut down the time of the round, how many rounds, etc.? The first thing that strikes me is a big jump in class, but it's not impossible that Jake Paul, like I said, shocks the world. I think it's unlikely though. But regardless, it's on Netflix. It's free. Let's face it, I'm probably going to watch it.
Well, if Joshua was 46 instead of 36, you know, then I might be going along with that analogy. But 36 in this day and age, you're really, you know, really not washed up. I mean,
it's not.
We got guys going into their 40s and still giving a good show.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so and I think with the offset of talent there that. Joshua at 36 is, you know, he's still going to have plenty of energy and skill and everything to take care of Mr. Paul.
Yeah. I think 36 isn't too bad. It is a big leap in talent. Speaking of great fights, couple fights that we haven't covered yet. Going back 2 weeks first was the Erickson Lubin versus Vergil Ortiz fight, and Vergil Ortiz won that. He just kind of walked him down basically. And I've always been a big fan of Erickson Lubin. He had a stellar amateur career and has come up short in a couple pro fights, but he's always fought really good competition. And so that's quite a statement for Vergil Ortiz to make in trying to make that Boots Ennis fight. Now there is a numbers thing going on where they're not exactly agreeing on that, but that's the fight to make at 154. You kind of have to favor Boots based on he just looks a little bit more polished, but it's really hard to say because sometimes guys that look kind of rough around the edges, because of the timing and their sense of distance, they're just able to get the job done. And so if that fight does come off, I think that's going to be an awesome fight. And then this past weekend, we had the Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr., the second fight. And what was noticeable to me, and that was the decision in favor of Conor Benn, what was noticeable to me was that in the first fight, Conor Benn seemed a little wild, a little raw, and this fight he looked a lot more polished. He was landing those big shots, and he dropped Eubanks a couple times. Did you get a chance to see that fight, either one of those? And what are your thoughts on either a Boots Ennis versus Vergil Ortiz match or a Conor Benn, Chris Eubank, the third match?
I don't know that we need a third match between Ben and Conor.
I think they were saying that this is it.
Yeah, I don't. I think we saw everything we needed to see in those two fights. Mm-hmm. It'd be better for both of them to go on with their careers. But then, if they have 4 or 5 fights later, and depending on how those fights pan out, the public might demand it. Yeah. Because neither fight was a bad fight.
Yeah.
They were entertaining. Now, Boots Ennis, he's, that's a tough customer there.
He is.
So I gotta go with Boots.
Yeah.
He's just on the toughness.
Yeah, he is. He's got a lot of tools. You kind of have to favor him, but that's why the guys fight, right? That's to actually see who's going to come out ahead. So with that said, any other thoughts before we close out for the night?
Well, with the speculation like you and I have about, Boots and his fight, and how we think that's what makes boxing. That's what makes all this stuff worthwhile. Is differences of opinion,
Mhm.
and it keeps it exciting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, I think that starting probably either next month or definitely in January, we'll start stepping up these videos and getting them out to the public and trying to give them what they want. You know, so far everything seems to be pretty good. People seem to be interested in the content. So as long as that continues, we'll give it to them.
Great. Yeah, we'll be definitely get on a schedule there.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, and thank you all for watching.